In this session, let's quickly identify the subnet details given an IP address and a mask. What we're going to do is, once we get an IP address and mask, we'll find the network side and host side of that IP address. Once we identify that, when we will identify the network ID or the subnet ID of that particular IP address. In the third step, we are going to find the broadcast ID for that network in a very simple manner. And finally, we are going to see the IP range that can be used in that network. So let's get started with the step one. The first exercise, in this exercise, I'm going to use an IP address 172.16.19.23/24. So the first step is to find the network side and the host side of this particular IP address. So first thing that you have to do is convert the /24, which is the mask, into the binary format, which will look like this. So you see that there is a consecutive ones and then followed by consecutive zeros. All those ones represent the network and all those zeros represent the host side. This is how we will be clearly able to identify the network side and the host side from the mask. It is actually derived from the mask. So from the mask, we found out that the first 3 octet, which is the 24 bits, is the network side and the 0 is representing the host side. Now, when you superimpose that into these IP addresses, the first 3 octets, that's 172.16.19, that is 8 bits, 8 bits, 8 bits, total of 24 bits represent the network. And the 13, which is the 8 bits, that represents the host. So now we are clearly able to identify what is the network side. So the network side for this particular IP address 172.16.19.13 is 172.16.19. Now, in the second exercise, let's find out the network ID. To identify the network ID for this particular IP address 172.16.19.23/24, it's pretty simple because we already identified our network side as well as our host side. Now, what we have to do is convert these into the binary format. So the 172.16 and 19 and 23 is converted into the binary. And as we already know the host side, all we need to do is convert that host side into 0 and keep the network side unchanged, which will convert it into something like this 172.16.19.0/24. And that is the network ID for this particular IP address. Now let's identify the broadcast ID for the network. Again, the broadcast ID for the same IP address 172.16.19.23, we already identified the network side and the host side. How do you identify the broadcast ID? Is just simple by making the host bit into ones. Remember, we made all the host bit to 0 to make and identify the subnet ID or the network ID. Now, to identify the broadcast ID or understand what would be the broadcast ID, you will make all the host bit into 1. The network side of 172.16.19 all remains the same. So it will look like this, exact same on the network side, but on the host side, we made all into 1, which will turn into something like this. 172.16.19.255/24. So the broadcast ID for the IP address 172.16.19.23 is going to be 172.16.19.255. And finally, we are going to identify the IP ranges that can be used in the network. The IP range in the network for same IP address, how do you identify that? It's nothing but the set of numbers that comes in between your network ID and the broadcast ID. So if you see the table here, the first ID, the first line in the table 172.16.9.0/24, if you remember, that is our network ID or subnet ID. And once you increment your the host part with 1 bit, where in our case it is 0000001, which is the host bit side, that becomes the first IP address 172.16.19.1 when you convert it in the decimal format. And as you increase these and add these host bits, there will be new IP address that is actually coming in. And you can actually go on by adding those bits over here each of permutation combination is going to give you a new IP address in that particular range. Only one condition that we need to verify is the IP addresses should be between 172.16.90.0, which is the subnet ID, and 172.16.19.255, which is the broadcast ID. So the IP address starts from 172.16.19.1 all the way to 172.16.19.254, and 255 is going to be the broadcast ID. That's all for this video. Thank you.